bundles, what up, bro? Yo, dummy. Hey. Told her pop out, told her pull up. Told her pop out, told her pull up. Told her pop out, told her pull up.
This team to me can go two different ways, and I think they're more on the lines of going 7-9, 8-8, maybe 9-7. I think 9-7 will be a good year for this team. But my thing with this team is just they remind me a lot of like the Baltimore Ravens in the sense of I think they're going to have a really good defense, and I think they're going to have a really bad offense. And last year they had basically no passing game, and part of that reason because they had Tyrod Taylor as their quarterback, and halfway through the year they got Kelvin Benjamin, who was hurt for 3 or 4 games or so. And his favorite receiver was Zay Jones, who was a rookie, who really had issues getting separation as a rookie as well, just a smaller guy, not ready. Honestly, I don't think at that point to be thrusted on as like a number 2 slot receiver type thing. So their receiving core was just really, really not talented enough last year to compete with some of the secondaries they were going with. And another thing, they were run heavy. They had the ability to run the ball a lot. They had Eric Wood, Richie Incognito, Cordy Glenn. Those are 3 of the guys that I know that they had on their line that aren't going to be there this year. Incognito either is released or isn't on the team anymore, one or the other. Cordy Glenn plays for the Bengals now. And then Eric Wood had to retire because of a neck or some kind of spinal injury, I think it is. And he was a really good lineman for them as well. I don't think they expected him to be. I knew that they didn't expect his career to be going on for that much longer, but I don't think they expected him to be out this year. So some of the key guys that they had to re-sign this year are guys that they had to figure out what they're going to do with. Kyle Williams, they re-signed, I think was a good re-sign. He's going to be a good veteran on the defensive line. Jordan Matthews is at New England now. He's gone. Sharice Wright went to Oakland. Mike Tolbert, they didn't re-sign him. Mike Tolbert basically played backup running back last year. They didn't really have a backup running back, so Tolbert played that. Ramon Hubbard re-signed. That's a good re-sign. That's one of their best tacklers. Preston Brown is gone. That's not good. He's in Cincinnati now. EJ Gaines is in Cleveland. He's gone. So they had some issues, Things that I said they ought to look at this offseason was address the quarterback situation, obviously. They knew they didn't like Tyrod at quarterback. Nathan Peterman really isn't ready. There's some good quarterbacks in this next draft. Is there a guy that you see that you like, that you want? Offensive line. What did I say here? Offensive line is sorry at times, and it's going to be even more sorry with the fact that they lost half their line. They did sign Russell Bodine. That was an all right pick. Not just an awesome pick, or an awesome ad, but it's somebody on their line that they need. The key linebackers need to be resigned. Humber got re-signed. Brown's gone, so they're going to have to replace a linebacker there. Need a defensive tackle to anchor defensive line. That's another thing they needed, and I thought they should draft defense. So as the draft came around, they went ahead and got Josh Allen at 7 overall. They traded up to get Josh Allen, I think, at 7. And I really like the pick. I think he's going to fit in well with Buffalo. Now, is Josh Allen going to play game 1 this year? Probably not. It'll probably be McCarron and Peterman. That'll be probably one of the storylines for the Bills going into this to the mini camps and stuff, is the quarterback situation. I think Josh Allen probably takes over about week 8, week 12, somewhere in there. There's a couple of teams this year, when you talk about the Browns and the Jets as some other examples, as teams that are probably going to be playing guinea pig type with their quarterbacks for the first 8 weeks, and hoping that they kind of crumble to the point where they can bring on their young guy to get them thrusted onto the scene. Josh Allen's just another one of those guys. I think he's the future for Buffalo. If Buffalo wants to be successful, they've got a really good defense, and then in the next couple of years, they need to they need to figure out their offensive line. They need to figure out their tight end and receivers. They need to really draft well in those or add new guys there. And then they need to understand, too, that LaShawn McCoy is about 30 now. So LaShawn McCoy is going to be on his way out before we know it, or his production is going to go down at least. So he's a guy that you're not going to be able to re-sign. So you're going to need a new long-term running back here in Buffalo. So those are some key things that they need to do in the next coming years. Running back wasn't maybe an issue right now this year, so it's okay that you didn't attack it head on. But in the next coming years, for the Josh Allen regime, I think you're going to need a new, younger running back, and you're going to need him some receivers to throw to, not just Zay Jones. Kelvin Benjamin's really, to me, has been a good player, and prospect-wise, when you're looking at him, you say, okay, this isn't a bad guy, but what really did Kelvin Benjamin bring to the table to this offense last year? Not a lot, in my opinion. And then they had a really good draft though. Tremaine Edmonds, that's that linebacker that they needed. To replace Preston Brown. I think he's going to come in and he's going to be good immediately. I think that it was one of the top picks in the draft. That pick at 16, Tremaine Edmonds. Harrison Phillips, I think, is like a baby Kyle Williams. I think it's great that Kyle Williams came back, teach him how to play a little bit. That's a really good pick. Taron Johnson, a guy that most people probably not really heard of. He's a Weber State guy. Had a really good film in the I think it's the FCS playoffs. It's whatever the second division is. He came up. He was everywhere in any of the games that I watched. When I watched Weber State, he was always coming up big plays everywhere. I think a really good pick for the Bills. Hopefully, he can make an impact on the secondary sooner than later. Saron Neal, a guy out of, I think it was Jacksonville State. Really good film from him. I like him. Wyatt Teller, I think an offensive lineman. Ray McLeod, a wide receiver / return type guy that I really like out of Clemson. I really like this pick. I think Zay Jones had some issues this offseason. I don't know if Zay Jones maybe panned out to be the player that they thought that he would be. In the year one, I thought he'd have a little bit better production with the amount of catches that he had at Eastern Carolina. I think Ray McLeod may be the slot guy for the Bills moving forward. And then Austin Proehl, his dad played in the league, pretty good little slot guy out of North Carolina. Didn't get to play a whole lot this year because of an injury that he sustained like week 1 or week 2. But he was one of the last guys drafted. He's got NFL lineage. So we'll see what happens with him. I was really impressed with the draft. I like the draft that the Bills had. I thought they did a really good job for they had a lot of losses this offseason. A lot of losses, and they didn't really get to add a whole lot. Jeremy Curley, Chris Ivory, A.J. McCarron. Trent Murphy was one of their better ads. Vontae Davis was another really good ad. Linebacker Stanford was a good ad. And then star Luda Ludi. Something that we talk a lot about when we talk about the Bills is what he's done to get, Sean McDermott, what he's done to get a lot of his Panther players back. When you think about him, he's added star, Luda Ludi. He's added Joe Webb, which is a guy that you probably wouldn't add. Keelan, I think it's Keelan Clay he added last year as well, which I think is not on the team anymore. And then there's a couple other guys. Obviously, Mike Tolbert was another Panther. And then Kelvin Benjamin. So there's a lot of guys that he's added that were on the Panthers that are on the Bills now. A lot of guys that he liked that he liked for his system or whatever. And so I'm not really impressed with the Bills' offense. I think that, last year I think that the Bills' offense was pretty one-dimensional. It was a lot about running the ball. And, there was games where they were able to run the ball and they looked pretty good in it. But in the game that they weren't able to run the ball, they didn't look good at all. They looked like one of the worst teams. And I think that their offensive line is getting worse. I think something else, a lot of people look at a running back and say, oh, well, LaShawn McCoy, they should be fine. I think sometimes I don't think people realize that offensive line has a lot to do with what the running back does. And I think that's part of the reason that the Steelers don't feel as if they need to pay Le'Veon, because they feel like they have one of the better offensive lines in the league, which they do. And they feel like they can plug anybody back there and that guy will produce. And I think that's how a lot of the NFL feel about their running backs. Is the running backs is the guy that gets a lot of the glory, but is he really the guy that is he really, if the offensive line wasn't there, would he be doing the same things that he's doing? So I don't think the Bills are going to have as good of a year running the ball. The one thing that's going to get the Bills to that 9-7, 7-9 area is their defense. Their defense is very stacked, very good offensive line, or very good defensive line. You know, Shaq Lawson really hasn't even got to play that much, and he was one of their top picks last year. Their linebackers are good with Humber and Tremaine Edmonds, and then their secondary is one of the best secondaries, I think, in the league. When you talk about Jordan Poyer, when you talk about Micah Hyde as their safeties, two really good safeties, underrated safeties that had really good years last year, and then their cornerbacks are not that bad. When you talk about Vontae Davis, who they just added, and then Tre'Davious White, who they drafted last year that had a good year. So I think their secondary is very good. I think it's going to be a ball-hawking secondary. I think their linebackers are going to be very good at getting the tackles, just as they did last year. And I think that their defensive line has a bunch of space eaters on it that are really going to make it hard for you to run the ball. Another guy I forgot to mention, Star Lutuliti, that they just added as well. You know, Harrison Phillips, who they just added, Trent Murphy, another defensive lineman from the Redskins that they added, and then Kyle Williams, the veteran. So the Bills, it's their defense. If you look at their defense, man, this could be one of the best teams next year. And then you look at their offense and you say, this team's a little shaky. They remind me a lot of the Baltimore Ravens. But we'll see what happens with Buffalo this year. And I think that they need a little bit more depth at their running back position, and I think they need to find that guy to replace McCoy, because McCoy, this team can be good in the future, but I think by the time this team is at the point where it can be good, by the time it gets its receivers and by the time Josh Allen is ready to go, by the time it gets its offensive line to where they need it to be, I think LaShawn McCoy is going to be about dead at the running back. So, you know, you can get all those things, and then boom, you might lose that one piece that you've had the whole time. So we'll see what happens with the Bills.
Hey, told her pop out to the pull up. Told her pop out to the pull up. Told her pop out to the pull up. I'ma go pull up on shorty. Hey, I'ma go pull up on shorty. I might go pull up on shorty. I might go pull up on shorty. I'ma jump.